Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to install an aftermarket wheel to your Logitech G920 or G29 wheelbase. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is undo the screws on the back of the wheel. Now we're going to take our Allen key or a hex key and undo the 6 bolts on the front of the steering wheel. Now, providing you've undone all the screws and bolts, your wheel should want to pull off very easily, just like so. And what you're going to want to do is turn your wheel to the side, start to pull it off, and there's a connector in here that we're going to want to disconnect. Now your wheel should be fully disconnected from the base, like so. Now we're going to undo the 8 screws on the back of the circuit board here. Now we're going to separate the board from the wheel. This is quite a delicate process, so just be mindful of that and take a bit of care. This bottom part here of the board can be especially tricky. Okay, so now our board is disconnected from the wheel. We're going to set that aside. Now we're going to undo the screws holding the left and right shoulder buttons and the start and back buttons. Be careful when maneuvering your wheel at this step, as nothing is currently holding the buttons in anymore, so they will just want to fall directly out of the wheel if you turn it over. Now we're also going to want to undo these 2 screws so we can detach this whole assembly from the frame of the wheel. And once again, with those screws undone, this whole assembly should just want to lift off like that. Okay, so make sure your A, B, X and Y buttons and your D-pad or the PlayStation equivalent buttons are still in place. Otherwise, when you secure your circuit board back to this plastic assembly, you won't be able to get your buttons back in. So they have to be back in at this stage. But do not secure your right shoulder button, left shoulder button, start and back button or the PlayStation equivalent buttons just yet. Okay, now we want to reattach our circuit board back to the plastic assembly. Make sure that you line up all buttons and screw holes perfectly before reattaching the circuit board to the assembly. Okay, so once you've reattached your circuit board to the plastic assembly, you want to flip that over and you want to make sure that all of your buttons are pressing in the way that they should. I had to do this a second time as one of the buttons was slightly caught between the plastic and the board. So just make sure all your buttons are pressing okay, and if they are, then you can proceed on to the next step. For the next step, we're going to be reattaching our left shoulder button, right shoulder button, start button and back button. So we're going to flip the board over. We're going to put the buttons through, lie it down on its front and put the screws back in. So now once again, you just want to make sure them buttons are working okay, which they are. So now we want to reconnect our button assembly to the wheelbase. And then we're going to sit it back into the housing. It should sit in fairly nice and flush like that. And now we're going to start putting the 6 screws into the rear of the housing to secure the button assembly to the front. Okay, so now that our button assembly is mounted back to our wheelbase and everything seems to be working as it should, the next step is to mount our steering wheel adapter. This is a 70mm PCD adapter, so basically what that does is converts the, I think it's a 52mm bulb pattern on the Logitech wheel to a 70mm pattern so that you can accommodate most aftermarket wheels on the market. So my brother actually printed this one for me, but there's plenty of STL files available online if you have a 3D printer yourself, or if not, there are many places you can buy them from. Okay, so now we're going to begin the installation of the adapter to the wheel. So if you're using the exact same STL file as me, and by the way the link will be in the description for this particular one, the next thing you're going to want to do is insert your M5 nuts into the outside holes on the side of the adapter with the hex shaped holes on the outside. So we're going to push these in. And I'm actually just going to hit all of these a very light tap with a hammer. Now, ideally you want all the nuts to go in so that they're pretty much flush with the surface. Most of mine went in so that they're completely flush. I did have one that didn't want to sit down quite as much, just this one here. But that should still be fine. I think it's still in far enough. So now that we have the 6 nuts in that, we want to turn our adapter around and face the side that we've just put the nuts into towards the wheelbase. And then we're going to begin to install the 6 original screws that came out of our Logitech wheel into the inside holes on the adapter. And this will secure our adapter to the wheelbase. Okay, now that our adapter is secure to our wheelbase, the next thing we want to do is take our steering wheel, place it so that the holes on the wheel are in line with the 6 holes on the adapter, and then we're going to take our M5 by 20mm bolts, insert them in, and the nuts that we installed on the other side of the adapter before we put this wheel on will act as the receivers for these bolts. So I'm going to insert all these bolts by hand at first, and then tighten them up with the Allen key after. And there we go. Now our steering wheel is very securely mounted to our wheelbase. So now that that's installed, I'm going to take this wheelbase back over to my rig, reinstall that, and see what my first impressions of this mod are. Okay, so here I am now in Assetto Corsa Competizione, just pulling out of the pits. I think my force feedback is cranked up to 100, I'll have to check that. But initial impressions aren't too bad. For anyone wondering, yes, there is definitely a big decrease in the feeling of the strength of the force feedback. You know, obviously you're using a much bigger wheel, or in my case at least, it's a much bigger wheel on a wheelbase that isn't overly strong to begin with. Overall, I am still enjoying the feeling of it so far. Takes a bit of getting used to first because obviously that original Logitech wheel is so small. And I definitely feel like I'm overcompensating in my steering for that. But this is definitely just something that, you know, you'll get used to in time. The actual just physical feel and characteristics of a bigger wheel definitely make it feel more realistic to me. There is, as I said, the inherent reduction in the feeling of the force feedback, but it's certainly not something that I can't live with. And I definitely do plan on trying out a smaller F1 style wheel on this Logitech wheelbase as well, which is maybe what this sort of mod would be better suited for. There is the argument as well that this sort of size of wheel, this 330mm wheel, that, you know, this size of wheel being on a Logitech wheelbase, which is already a not overly powerful wheelbase, will reduce the life of the components inside the wheelbase. In regards to that, I can't really confirm anything yet. It sounds logical to me. I would imagine that you will probably reduce the life of your Logitech wheelbase somewhat by doing this, but I'm also not sure I see that as a genuine concern for most average users, you know, not sim racing 24/7. I know a lot of users said that for the Logitech wheelbases, they basically found it an essential upgrade to upgrade to a bigger wheel for drifting especially. So if you're a big drifter when it comes to sim racing, this could definitely be a very good option for you. Either way, this mod definitely feels like it's giving my Logitech wheelbase a bit of a new lease of life, and it's definitely making me relearn it a bit again. And I think that's something that pretty much everyone will enjoy. So I think for most people this mod will be worthwhile and will be rewarding. And definitely the way this particular design is done that I'm using at the moment makes this whole thing feel very solid. And definitely a big shout out to the original maker of that design. It works very well, and so far I'm very much enjoying it, and I'm definitely not against recommending it. But anyway guys, that's it for today's video. That's how we mount an aftermarket wheel to your Logitech Wheelbase. If you did enjoy the video, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Especially if you want to see some more 3D printed related sim racing projects, as I recently got a 3D printer myself and I plan to make more videos in relation to that. But that's it for this one anyway guys, so take care and I'll see you in the next one.